I think entropy is here to stay. It is the pattern in my cycles, it is what's constantly pushing me away from order, and is the universal force for a chaos that's beyond me. Now, entropy may seem like a merely physical occurrence. You would think of it in nature as the effect that moves atoms and molecules to higher disarray states. Yet, you would rarely connect that thought with the fact that your mind, at some level, is also atoms and molecules. So, what is stopping entropy from entering the nature of my thoughts and consciousness and constantly moving me away from order? Whenever I am in an organized state, where I'm collapsing the wave function with clarity around my intentions, it is easy to fall into the trap of thinking that this state of mind is constant. I would then apply a plan for my days, thinking that I would maintain that clarity, soon to be disappointed by the ignorance of dismissing the power of entropy. This entropy is so all-encompassing that it affects every area of my life, from my mind and my thoughts to my house and the dirt that accumulates under the furniture. It doesn't take that long for filth to sink in. Actually, it happens as fast as it possibly can. I change the cat's litter, yet to be filled with their poop less than 2 minutes after. The failure in attending this event, though, makes poop and smell accumulate in the course of a week is about enough for it to be enough. Usually the inflection points in the sine wave of my ups and downs are triggered by this is enough state. This is enough is usually caused by the stress that a high entropy state causes to the perception I have of myself. I am not a dirty guy. I am not a disorganized person. I think clearly. I am intentional about my life, and I have clear goals and expectations for myself. Now, what's contradictory about that is that I do not stop being me merely because I allowed entropy to do what it's naturally doing. Yet, during those moments, if you were to take a snapshot of myself, I would look like an entirely different person. Then the big question I'm trying to answer here is, how do I stop this? How can I be closer to who I wish to be without ignoring this natural phenomenon? And I know that this is going to be constantly pushing me away from who I want to be. In the absence of this state, or more precisely, when I have the perception that I am in control, that is because I have done some work that proves me that I am no longer in a high entropy state. Just then I am very powerful. It's almost as if I've got a blank canvas and I'm an avid painter. I could do anything. In the absence of this state, those milestones I set are achieved. I know this is a long route of trying and try it again, but I can do it constantly. Or, well, exactly, constantly is the function that entropy is inside of and is fucking around with. So what do I do? Well, I'm not mindfully fighting against gravity, am I? I'm not even thinking about gravity unless I get fatter. Then gravity becomes an issue. I'm not actively thinking about the laws of Newton, although my body is made to fight both. I guess that point is very important. My body is meant to fight gravity. It has muscles just for that purpose. It is intrinsically natural that I will be pretty good at it, because that's what millions of years of evolution brought to life. Now, I believe the issue of entropy affecting my mental state is mostly a mental paradigm. So what's up if my room is all filthy? If I was forced to live in that societal configuration, I would probably just migrate to a new place. The feeling of disgust for that disorder is only natural because my body is trying to protect itself, as high entropy environments have a higher likelihood of containing pathogens. So, is it only our societal setup and its underlying psychological consequences what's causing me not to just leave? There is a concept of my home, my bedroom, my office, and there is the concept of wanting a particular perception of orderliness for whatever I consider mine. Now, I am not going to argue against those societal values and its psychological implications, especially because I cannot edit them out and be social at the same time. One layer below in the onion, though, there's the effect that the lack of orderliness in my environment and even in other people's environments creates. Because I want to maintain myself and my outer perception of orderliness as a function of my self perception, I have a vectorized need that stems from that event. This need represents in my head somewhat as a dot in the multidimensional space that corresponds to my current self perception of well being. In the center of this self perception of well being, there is the compass of what I consider to be good and what I consider to be bad. I consider honesty to be good, so the closer I am to honesty, the better I perceive myself to be. I consider myself to be clean and orderly, and so the closer I am to be clean and orderly, the better I perceive myself to be. What happens though is that these are not stationary perceptions, mainly because entropy is in the picture. These perceptions are constantly being moved back and forth due to external events and the effect they have on each other. Regardless of how I am defining an objective function internally with the schema of what my life's events have created. I have been peeling away and organizing that schema over time, taking away things like caring too much about the perceptions others have over me, and so on. And at this point in my life, I'm not sure going again and doing the same thing and trying to modify it is meaningful to the overarching objective. So assuming the schema I have for the good of myself is correct, and also that the need to be orderly and my actual state of orderliness are all connected, then what is it that is changing here? Well, obviously the real component of orderliness is messed up by entropy. Entropy is just working all the time. Things are going to be disorganized, and that is a fact, is not a perception. Therefore, my need to be clean is always going to be there, and my intention to organize is always a consequence. Then, the only missing piece after accepting that whatever is my order is going to stop being ordered tomorrow is self-organizing in anticipation for that reality. It's no longer valuable that I would be impressed by this fact. That's like being impressed by the fact that the sun always rises. Furthermore, the self-perceived schema of what my mind considers good or wrong is affected by a multi-dimension of variables. This is when coping against the entropic nature of order is harder. I know that my room is going to be disarrayed tomorrow, and so the action to be taken is to organize it as soon as it's disarrayed, and to have daily habits that allow me to upkeep against entropy. And also, I should not forget, though, that cleanliness is not only a physical state, but also a mental self-perceived state. Disarray is also happening inside my mind, and as my room gets dirtier and dirtier, my self-perception does. Yet, this is not the only thing that's happening between my mind and my body. I get hungry and I eat whatever food there is. This food has an impact on my mental state, and my mental state has an impact on the actions I take, like what food I get, or whether I'm going to push or organize it or not. For actions that are not ingrained, there is an extra layer of difficulty in implementing them as automatic activities. For a compulsive cleaner, this issue I'm having is a bit easier to handle because the compulsion takes away the agency that you need in this picture. Now, in order to be constantly orderly, when that is not bodily natural, it's not a habit, it requires that agency to begin with. The thing is that the agency itself is bound to entropy. Agency, then, is entropic. Agency will naturally fade away in turn for bodily mediated states of mind. The issue is fighting against that natural phenomenon and keeping agency as constant as possible. Think of the sole purpose for agency as a social and intellectual animal is to provide a net benefit to your survival. If you're not in danger, and if you do not need to use that agency, then what is the purpose of having such a calorically expensive state of mind active all the time? There is no more comfortable space. And think of comfort as a measurement of how far away you are from needing to survive than between my sheets with my phone in the bed. My sheet provides warmth and shelter against the exterior. My bed provides comfort and a place to hold my body. My phone provides distraction. It keeps my mind engaged and entropic. It allows for it to stay in that safety for longer periods of time. When I am in the highest state of comfort, what do I need my agency for? My mind doesn't need to be engaged, and so it actively looks for a place for disengagement. Whoa, that's social media. Great. So let's go to that place. The absence of my phone in a comfort state is enough to push my mind to go a different direction that my body may not want. Yet even in those cases, it is hard, very hard to get my body to act, unless there's something urgent to do. When there's something urgent to do, there's no negotiation to be made. Urgency, though, has nothing to do with agency in this case. You didn't decide to feel that urgency. It sounds as if agency then was a magnitude, a gradient of self-power. It also sounds as if too much comfort takes away the need for having to use that power, and it's only natural that it would. I can draw the conclusion from this that it would make sense that wanting to clean or be orderly when I am, or I could be, in a comfort state would be very, very hard. If I am already in a better place, in a comfortable place, if I don't need to survive, then why would I go and change that? As a gradient, I've seen that agency increases with closeness in self-perception. It seems like when I go away from self-perceived goodness, it's more acceptable to continue moving on that direction. Instead, when I'm focusing closer to orderliness, it is actually way easier and requires way less agency gradient to maintain that state. Then only a cascade of actions or a particular state of mind can take me away from it. It takes no effort to continue being disorganized when you are, and it takes no effort to continue being organized when you are. But as you move away from one state to the other, events keep happening. You may be organized and your environment be disorganized. In those cases, in order to change this state, more agency is required. My argument is that if the brain is in a state of disarray, i.e., many distractions, thoughts coming and going, worry, anxiety, it is easier to maintain that state and stay there than to move away from it, and vice versa. There are events that will naturally move your orderliness away to disarray. That's what I'm talking about. That's entropy. The only way to counteract this from happening is to have habits that diminish the impact of these events. These events, though, will always happen. Disarray is always going to be there. And the natural thing to happen, and this shouldn't be a surprise, is that we are all bound to that direction. Yet, you do have that gradient of agency. The only way to make it insufficient is if enough events or a cascade of events disbalance the power of that agency. So next steps to me seem to be clearer now. One is accepting the fact that disarray is the norm, not the exception. If I am organized now, I may not stay like that forever. If I know that I will most likely not stay like this tomorrow, then what am I going to do now to avoid that? What is the impact distractions have at diminishing my agency? And what is the impact bad food have on diminishing my agency? So what do I think is more likely to happen if I go to bed with my phone? I would lose a big chunk of agency, and it would be much, much harder to get out of that state. I'm gonna let that realization sink in and move forward today with the clarity that I have in mind.